asking Maggie Britzy from the World Peace Flame Project to share a prayer with us. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you, Keith, and hi, everybody. So on behalf of the World Peace Flame Foundation, it's my privilege to read for us today the prayer of thanks for all faith traditions. It's just a short prayer, and I'd invite you to close your eyes as you just listen to these words. We give thanks for those of every faith tradition, named or unnamed, for the variety and richness of human spirituality, for our common quest for truth and our yearning for love, our longing for peace, and our commitment to justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Now, I'm going to ask the Reverend Dr. Inderjit Bogle, who has recently become one of our presidents, to properly welcome you.
I thank you. I greet you all in the name of Christ and wish upon you the peace and the blessings of God. It's a great honor to share with you. I'm a Methodist minister. I was ordained 40 years ago, and I've been a supporter for the Week of Prayer for World Peace from its very beginnings in 1974. And at your AGM 3 years ago, I was honored to receive the Hinkes Peace Award. Thank you very much. It is an honor indeed. And I am honored now to be president of the Week of Prayer for World Peace. I want to begin by thanking you all for your work and prayers for peace, and I want to assure you of my own prayerful solidarity. The Week of Prayer for World Peace is an annual call to pray for justice and peace among all people. It is a call to penitence for our failures and contributions to conflict, and a renewed commitment to work and pray for peace, and also to give thanks for all those who work for peace. Prayer for peace, the cessation of violence and killing, is perhaps the most common prayer and value of all people. War and violence are evil. We pray with Jesus, along with all who live in the midst of war and violence, that we may all be delivered from evil. Today, we pray for peace in the war-torn Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh. The United Nations was founded 75 years ago on the 24th of October this year. The purpose of UN was to work for a world without war and the peaceful resolution of conflict. At its very first meeting, the General Assembly of the United Nations called for the peaceful uses of atomic energy and the elimination of atomic and other weapons of mass destruction. And that remains the hope and prayer for people of all nations. To work and pray for peace is to build and develop cultures and lifestyles of non-violence for resolution of all conflict, internationally and nationally, amongst neighbors, in households, in congregations, in workplaces and organizations. I frequently pray in the company of people who think differently from me and with people of different faiths. And I believe the prayers of different people don't go to different gods, but to God who is one, but who is differently imagined and understood and honored throughout the world, and who will in no way turn away from anyone in prayer. So the prayers of all people are valued, and I ask you to add your prayers to all those who pray for peace in the world, and that is as urgent and important as ever. Thank you very much, and bless you. I honor and respect you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Inderjit. And now, Sister Elizabeth Donohoe, who was the recipient of the Hinkes Peace Award in 2018, will lead us in a prayer for world peace.
We pray for the power to be gentle, the strength to be forgiving, the patience to be understanding, and the endurance to accept the consequences of holding on to what we believe to be right. May we put our trust in the power of good to overcome evil and the power of love to overcome hatred. We pray for the vision to see and the faith to believe in a world emancipated from violence, a new world where fear shall no longer lead us or to commit injustice, nor selfishness make us bring suffering to others. Help us to devote our whole life and thought and energy to the task of making peace, praying always for the inspiration and the power to fulfill the destiny for which we and all women and men were created. Amen.
Thank you very much. Claydon is going to tell us something about the week of prayer for world peace, which we know some of you will know quite a lot about, but it's really great to see some new people who probably know very little about. Thank you, Sue.
In 1974, a call to prayer for world peace. In 1974, a call to prayer for world peace was issued in a letter to the then Archbishop Ramsay of Canterbury and other faith leaders. It started with a proposal from the Anglican Pacifist Fellowship that stated, and these words are very flowery, but I'm quoting here, "In the turmoil of a world increasingly dominated by violence and confusion, created by the apparent impotence of people to alleviate suffering caused by injustice, except by more recourse to violence, it seems to us that an unprecedented spiritual initiative is urgently required." The original call began by saying, believing that God is calling us to pray with new purpose and deeper understanding for peace and justice among all people, we invite our fellow believers of all faiths to join in a week of prayer for world peace. How did those faith leaders feel this initiative had such urgency? What was happening in 1974? Well, in looking back, sadly, some of the events of that year sound remarkably familiar to us today. There was an economic crisis, that one triggered by the oil crisis at the end of 1973. Iran and Iraqi forces clashed on the border. In Taiwan, police shot into a crowd, killing many. Ceausescu became the dictator of Romania. Yemen suspended its constitution. In Cyprus, there was a military coup followed by an invasion by Turkey. And the then USSR was carrying out monthly nuclear tests. And tests were also still being carried out by the UK, USA, France, and India. And for us here in the UK, the IRA Guildford pub bombing left 5 dead and 65 injured. Unhappily, I am sure that in 2020, we could just change the places in many of these events and feel we were reading yesterday's headlines. For almost 5 decades, many organizations and individuals have supported and promoted this week, adhering to the guiding principle for the week, which was stated by the first chair, Dr. Edward Carpenter, then Dean of Westminster. And that principle is what we follow still, that the peace of the world needs to be prayed for by the faiths of the world. Now, each October, people are called to join together in praying and thinking about peace and justice. Sometimes it's easy to think that as individuals, we can do little. But there is much, still and especially at this time of pandemic. So as we start the Week for World Peace 2020, I commend you all to think, pray, and act for peace. But of course, not just for this week, but throughout the year.
Thank you, Sue. And Sue is the chair of the Anglican Peace Fellowship. Now, going to invite another Sue to speak to us, Sue Gale. And this year, 2020, as we know, is a number of anniversaries. Amongst them is the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombs. And Sue Gale from the Methodist Peace Fellowship will now share her memories of visiting Hiroshima. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Keith. Looking across the water to Hiroshima from the beautiful island of Miyajima, we shielded our eyes from the bright morning sun. It was 8:15 a.m. On another morning, the 6th of August, 1945, at the same time as homes and businesses came to life and people prepared for their day's work and children made their way to school, the cloudless blue sky turned dark as the giant mushroom cloud blotted out the sun. Black acid rain fell and radioactivity saturated the air. The history of the world was changed forever. The euphemistically named little boy had done what it had been designed to do. Walking past the skeletal remains of what is known as the Atomic Dome, once a commercial building in the city, through the beautifully landscaped Memorial Park, we reach the Hiroshima Museum, visited by over 1 million people a year. The scorched, mangled remains of a child's tricycle and a small blackened metal lunchbox are among the graphic objects on display. There are many images of people attempting to walk, screaming out for water as their skin melted off their bodies before slumping to the ground. The river so full of bodies that the water could not be seen. A step where only the shadow of an anonymous vaporized body remains. Outside, hushed groups of Japanese school children walk slowly, pausing to bow their heads at the memorial mound, where the ashes of tens of thousands of the victims are laid. They wait in respectful silence as they contemplate the horrors which the older generation endured on that fateful morning. Then across the air comes the sweet sound of children's voices as they sing a song dedicated to peace. Each day, school parties visit the site. It is the #1 field trip in Japan. Nearby, the peace bell and the wording on the memorial monument express the spirit of Hiroshima, enduring grief, transcending hatred, pursuing harmony and prosperity for all, and yearning for genuine, lasting world peace. Then on to the Children's Peace Monument, topped by the graceful statue of a young girl commemorating Sadeko Sasaki. She was 2 years old when she became a victim of the atom bomb. Though severely irradiated, she survived another 10 years. She had heard about the legend of the cranes, sacred birds in Japan, who can live to a great age, which states that anyone who folds 1,000 origami cranes will be restored to health. She decided to try to complete this task. She never recovered, but her schoolmates and then children from all over the world continued to make the cranes. And here is a little paper crane which I brought out there. Thousands of these colourful creations surround the statue and have become a poignant symbol for peace. At the base of her statue are inscribed the words, "This is our cry, this is our prayer, peace in the world." Further along the pathway, elderly folk engage with individuals. These are the hibaksha, survivors of the nuclear holocaust. Without a trace of bitterness or recrimination, they simply tell their stories. The younger ones call themselves in utero, as they were in their mother's wombs when the bomb was dropped. Many babies were born with deformities and suffered lifelong ill health, as did thousands of adults. And of course, many children were orphaned. The Peace Boat, an NGO working to promote peace, human rights and sustainability, since 2008 has visited more than 270 ports in 70 countries and has regularly invited elderly hibaksha to travel on the ship to share their testimony around the world. When they visited London, I was privileged to hear the moving stories of these rather frail elderly people, some of whom have not been able to speak of their experiences until recent years. In spite of language and cultural differences between them and those whom they encounter, their message is clear: never again. Let us echo this as we too cry. This is our prayer, never again. Peace in the world. Let each of us strive to make the world a more peaceful place for ourselves and for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Now, a more positive 75th anniversary this year was the foundation of the United Nations, also in 1945. And David Waldrop from the Westminster United Nations Association will now give us an update on that. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for inviting me. I was touched by Dr. Indrajit Bogal speaking about, as a Methodist, about the very first meeting of the UN General Assembly held in London. And some here might not know that it was held in Methodist Central Hall. And the government at the time had to say to the Methodists, we've got to clear you out, I'm afraid, but we will find another home for you in the interim. And so the Methodists were sent to the Victoria Palace Theatre. But there were so many Methodists that they wouldn't fit in. So they were moved to the largest theatre in London, the Colosseum. And a good old joke from the Methodists is that they were the first Christians ever to leave the Colosseum alive. But I have written a piece in the Anglican Pacifist Fellowship about the UN. I spoke about the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the ability at times for the General Assembly to tell the Security Council to get out of the way, and how at this moment the Secretary General is saying to governments, we want to listen to the people, not just you. And that is an ongoing affair. And on the 24th, the day actually of your AGM, we're having a big online meeting to discuss security in different manners, which I will talk about later. But I want you to join me on an Easter egg hunt, just to brighten things up just a bit. Because Sir Henry Maine, a member of Parliament, said, "War is as old as mankind, but peace is a modern invention." Now, Sir Michael Howard, the great historian, agreed with that, but speaking 150 years ago. So what is the problem with peace? Why can't we get it organized? I've always had this is my Easter egg hunt. I've always been looking for places where I can find information about peace. And normally you would look in a library. And I have looked in all sorts of libraries. I've been to the Nobel Library in Oslo, and with the advice from the librarian there, don't ever follow our classification system. I've been to the International Peace Institute in New York and had a meeting in the library there. And I was so pleased when the meeting ended and I could say, "How do you classify your books?" They said, "Alphabetical." Isn't that hopeless? So I remember I was in Cairo and I was talking to the deputy chief mufti who was in charge of publications. "Oh yes, we're all for peace in the Islamic world. So how do you bring out books and on what subject?" He said, "I don't know, I'll ask. In fact, I'll have a conference on how to classify books on peace." Well, we got nowhere. And this, if you look on the internet, you will find libraries for peace mentioned, but the libraries don't actually mention about what books they have on the subject of peace, just that they're for it. Well, that's not really good enough. I went to the British Library and I said, "How do you classify your books?" "We don't know. Try the Library of Congress in Washington." The Library of Congress in Washington said, "Try it yourself." And I looked at all 2,500 titles with peace in the title. And we have Wild Bill Hickok, Damon Runyon, shoot-ups, peace from backache, and so on. There is no coordination. Now, why is this? And what are the impacts of this? Because it's the people I'm looking at now, in a way, who should have the answers to this question. But collectively, we have all failed. Go into your bookshop and say, "Tell me to a war, those stacks on war." You know what you'll find. First World War, Second World War, Punic War, submarine wars, nuclear wars, everything categorized and laid out. Then ask the next question. Where are your books on peace? They don't know. I remember going to Hatchard's in Piccadilly and asking that same question. And when I asked a second time, asking for his books on peace, I could see he was worried. Could this madman reach him before he could reach the telephone and shout for the police? This is no longer getting funny. I saw Fidel Ramos, who was the president of the Philippines. He was retired at this stage. He said, "I have a peace library." So we went up to the attic and I said, "This is not a library. This is like everyone's loft. It's full of junk." He said, "Well, David, when you are president of a country, people give you a lot of junk as gifts." And my wife said, "Put it all upstairs." But he did bring me back a year later when he was in London. And he said, "I have organized my peace library. And I did it out of my own money," he said. So we do have a problem with peace. Publishers don't know where the market is. Bookshops don't know which shelves to put it on. And libraries are in the same position. So whilst if Sir Henry Maine was right, peace is a modern invention, so is electrical engineering. But you know, when you go into Waterstones, you will know where to find books on electrical engineering. So that's no excuse, I argue. That's no excuse. And organizations like yours and all the different organizations which are represented by the 70, 80 people present here, we've got to have a collective think of how we're going to find ways in which we can talk about peace. The United Nations, through UNESCO, the Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, came out with, in year 2000, with the Culture of Peace Initiative. And it broke down the peace into 8 categories: education for peace, sustainable development, disarmament and security, human rights, democratic participation, tolerance and solidarity, free flow of information, and equality of women. And it really said, if you have all those 8 elements in a particular community, then the likelihood is you'll have peace. In other words, approaching the issue of peace not as a great amorphous mass to somehow comprehend, as so often people have, but as normal human-sized chunks which we can look at. And in fact, at our conference next week, we're running the peace and security element of it, and we're approaching it from that angle. What are the best ideas in human rights? What are the best ideas in sustainable development? Which are the best ideas in human security? So that maybe we can build building blocks of peace and really put it together. So really that's all I'm saying. I've been around the world looking for peace libraries, and there are more peace libraries which are the collected papers of tyrants than there are peace libraries which claim to be helpful. And that's a terrible admission. I end, and thank you very much for inviting me, back on a faith issue, the words of Dag Hammarskjöld about the United Nations. The United Nations was not created to bring us to heaven, but in order to save us from hell. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that really refreshing and interesting take on peace. Speaking as an ex-librarian, I very much sympathize with what you were saying.
Thanks.
Now I'm going to ask Binafra Bhandari to read an ancient Zoroastrian prayer on altruism. Thank you, Binafra.
Thanks, Keith. So lovely to see so many people here today. It's absolutely wonderful. As a committee, we've not always had very many people of colour attend these events, so I'd like to extend a very special, warmest welcome to my brothers and sisters of colour here today. I was going to speak on altruism, but actually last night I had another thought. I'm a Zoroastrian, and as a Zoroastrian, I understand that my faith doesn't belong to me or to any particular community or country or race. It sits in the heart of anybody who believes that the true way to peace comes through the action of free will. Now, in Zoroastrianism, free will is a central concept. We are born with free will, guided by our parents until we can take on the responsibility to action it ourselves. We have a duty to exercise that goodwill through good words, good thoughts, and turn those into good actions. Not just when it's convenient, not just when we feel like it, but all the time. And this isn't easy. In a set of meditative poems from about 3000 BCE in Persia, Zarathustra communes with the spirit of wisdom. And I wanted to share those words with you today. At this great moment of choice, when men and women, righteous or deceitful, wise or unwise, search within themselves to contemplate and put into words what they know, you, O Serenity, you enlighten us with your energy so that we overcome our doubt and choose our path and doctrine. And so today I invite you all to commit, to choose, to use your free will that you have as a human being at least once a day to produce one action towards an act of peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Binafra. That was very powerful. Now we're going to have a contribution from the Baha'i community, and Edith McCarthy is going to share some thoughts, and she'll be followed by a recording of Sarah Percival, who has recorded a story for us to listen to. Thank you, Edith.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In the Baha'i scriptures, Baha'u'llah the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, has made many references to peace. In fact, he referred to it as the most great peace, as the ultimate aim of his teaching is the unification of mankind. So these are his words. The well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. In 1890, a Cambridge professor of Oriental Studies, E.G. Brown, attained the presence of Baha'u'llah. This is what Baha'u'llah said to him. Baha'u'llah said, "We desire the good of the world and the happiness of the nations, that the bond of affection and unity between the sons of men should be strengthened. What harm is there in this? These fruitless strifes, these ruinous wars shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come." So this is Baha'u'llah's prophecy that we can work towards and need to work towards achieving this most great peace. I would like to conclude with a prayer for peace from the Baha'i scriptures. O thou kind Lord, thou hast created all humanity from the same stock. Thou hast decreed that all shall belong to the same household. In thy holy presence, they are all thy servants, and all mankind are sheltered beneath thy tabernacle. All have gathered together at thy table of bounty. All are illumined through the light of thy providence. O God, thou art kind to all. Thou hast provided for all, dost shelter all, conferrest life upon all. Thou hast endowed each and all with talents and faculties, and all are submerged in the ocean of thy mercy. O thou kind Lord, unite all, let the religions agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of the oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. Thank you.
This is a story from Azerbaijan about two shahs, two kings. They lived in neighbouring kingdoms and they didn't have a very good relationship. They bickered and they argued with each other, and the arguments turned bad. They had a great deal of anger towards each other, and all this escalated until one day they declared war on each other. Well, one of the shahs hadn't actually been to war for about 15 years. He'd forgotten where he'd put his battle dress, so of course he asked his mother to go and find it for him. She went and she found it, she brought it to him, and as he was looking through it, he said, "But mother, where is my helmet? You haven't brought my helmet." "Oh, my son," she said, "you don't need your helmet, you'll be fine." "But of course I need my helmet, mother. I'm going into battle. Go and find it." "Oh," she said, "well, the thing is, it's too heavy for me to carry." "Oh, for goodness sake," he said, "come on, show me where it is and I'll get it." And he stormed off through the palace, and she was following him and tugging at him, going, No, my son, please stop. No, I must explain it. Please, you really don't need... Oh, listen to me, listen. She said, "All right, I'll tell you the truth. There is there is a little dove who has built her nest in your helmet. And she has laid her eggs there, and these eggs have hatched, and there are 3 sweet little chicks nesting in your helmet. And if you disturb the mother, she will fly away. What will happen to these 3 little chicks? Well, the Shah didn't know what to say, but, well, you must be obedient to your mother. So he scratched his head and he thought about it, and he couldn't see any other option. So he said, well, very well, Mother, I just won't go to war with a helmet on then. And so the next day he went to the battlefield on his horse with his great armies, and these 2 great armies met, and the Shah had no helmet on. And the other Shah saw from his position that the first Shah was not wearing his helmet, and this disturbed him greatly, and he thought, is the Shah so confident that he's not even wearing a helmet? And he couldn't believe it, so he called out across the battlefield, "Why aren't you wearing your helmet?" What was the Shah to say? He was supposed to be this big, strong, tough guy, and there was some story about baby doves and his mother, and then he thought, well, if I am some big, tough guy, I might as well just tell the truth. So he shouted back, "A dove has built her nest in my helmet, and my mother doesn't want me to disturb her chicks." And the other Shah was just aghast. He couldn't believe it. He thought there must be some trick involved, so he sent some of his men, go and find out the truth. And they came back and they said, "Your Highness, it is true. This is the real story, that there is a dove in the helmet." And the Shah was just full of wonder at this, and it really made him think. And he rode to the edge of the battle line, and he got off his horse, and he walked towards the Shah with no helmet on. And he said to him, "You were not willing to wear your helmet because you didn't want to harm 3 little chicks. You didn't want to destroy their home. What right have we to harm thousands of people and destroy their homes? I'm ready to sign a peace treaty right now." And so that day, a peace treaty was signed, and they shook hands on it. And that is why the dove is known as the bird of peace.
Thank you for that contribution from the Baha'i, from Edith, and from Sarah. I'm a Quaker, and we've had a testament to peace for over 350 years. I'm going to read a passage from Quaker Faith and Practice, which is our book which combines our government and inspiration. I've selected a passage by Wolf Mendel, who came over to Britain from Germany with his parents, fleeing from Nazi Germany when he was 10 years old. The first friends had an apocalyptic vision of the world transformed by Christ, and they set about to make it come true. For us, it is not so important when the perfect world will be achieved or what it will be like. What matters is living our lives in the power of love and not worrying too much about the results. In doing this, the means becomes part of the end. Hence, we lose the sense of helplessness and futility in the face of the world's crushing problems. We also lose the craving for success, always focusing on the goal to the exclusion of the way of getting there. we must literally not take too much thought for the tomorrow, but throw ourselves wholeheartedly into the present. That is the beauty of the way of love. It cannot be planned, and its end cannot be foretold. And now we have a contribution from the Brahma Kumaris. Two young people will lead us in a mediation, followed by the song, One Wish. Thank you very much.
Sitting quietly, let me take a moment to go within myself and just explore who I am. Let me ask myself, what does peace really mean to me? Firstly, am I peace? Or am I chasing for peace? Where can I find it? As I go inwards and I appreciate my beautiful qualities within me, I really understand that in this solitude, I can really use this solitude as a magnifying glass that can show me who I really am and what peace really means to me. Soon, I realize that peace means stability, being stable no matter what, whether I'm facing external or internal events. I remain strong. The roots of myself remain strong, just like a tall tree, still standing no matter what. Only I can create this peace because that is who I am. So let me embrace the truth that I am the director, I am the producer, the designer of my thoughts, of my words, and my actions. I, the master of these three things, am in control, and I choose how they turn out. My thinking, my words, and my actions all contain energy, and I am the one who manifests it. Just like a flower has its fragrance, every thought, every word, and every action has its own fragrance. So let me be the one to spread a beautiful and wonderful smell throughout the whole world. Being the controller and the master, and keeping this fragrance within me, I have peace and love inside, so that I can persevere, explore, admire, cultivate, and elevate my true self, a being of peace and light.
If I had one wish
now we come to the part of the gathering where we're going to have the presentation of this year's annual Wilson Hinkes Peace Award. And Sue Claydon is going to explain about the award to us. Thank you, Sue.
The Wilson Hinkes Annual Peace Award was established by the Week of Prayer for World Peace to recognize significant contributions by individuals, organizations, or projects in furthering peace, justice, and reconciliation. The award focuses on grassroots initiatives. It enables otherwise often untold stories to be told and honored, and seeks to inspire others. It is open to all, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, or faith. The award is named in honor of Reverend Gordon Wilson and Reverend Sidney Hinkes, both former chairs of the Week of Prayer for World Peace. This annual award brings with it a grant of £500 to help the individual or organization continue their peacemaking. This year, we are very pleased to have Lawrence Wilson and his sister Rosalind, and also Elizabeth Stewart, daughter of Sidney Hinkes, here to join us. And I will now hand over to Lawrence to present the award.
Thank you, Sue. And as Sue just said, for those of you who don't know me, I am the son of Gordon Wilson, who was a lifelong committed pacifist and one of the founders of the Week of Prayer for World Peace, and in whose memory, along with his great friend and partner in the cause of peace, Sidney Hinkes, this award is named. It's now nearly 30 years since Dad passed away, but he would have been delighted that the wonders of modern technology have enabled this ceremony to take place safely today in the midst of a global pandemic. He loved technology and was very proud of the computer he bought and learned to operate way back in the 1970s in order to produce and edit the copy for the original WPWP prayer leaflets. More importantly, he would have been even more delighted that there are still people meeting, campaigning, and praying for peace and reconciliation all these years later. His only disappointment would be that the world seems to need people like Simone Ramacci and all the others like him, and yourselves, even more than ever, as the world seems to be sliding into a period of profound political and social disarray. I'm very pleased, therefore, in memory of my father, to present the Wilson Hinkes Peace Award for 2020 to Simone Ramacci. Simone is an assistant congregational pastor in Essex. He is a trustee of the Fellowship of Reconciliation and a long-serving volunteer with the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. Whilst an undergraduate, he founded the Progressive Christians SCM group. In 2018, he persuaded St. John's Ambulance to change their rules so that their workers can choose which poppy to wear whilst on duty at remembrance time. And he is currently working on a master's degree with the Cambridge Theological Federation. Simone was nominated by Kathleen, or Kate King, who I think is with us today, for his work on promoting peace using social media. The committee felt that this type of grassroots peacemaking, the recognition of which is the reason the Peace Award was established, should now be seen as a major way of working for peace in the third decade of the 21st century. In her nomination, Kate wrote, "I met Mr. Ramacci last August in an online Christian pacifist group, and he has continually shown his he is dedicated to the cause of pacifism and peace. Not only has he been involved in many peace campaigns and written many great pieces on pacifism, he also shows he is a man of peace in his personal life, with his patience and understanding towards those around him, choosing love over hate at every opportunity he can. A perfect illustration of using social media for peace work is the fact that Kate lives in Ohio in the US and has never actually physically met Simone. Simone, I'm sure my father would be pleased to see this award going to a young, proactive peacemaker such as yourself. Many congratulations on receiving this award, which it is clear to me you thoroughly deserve. Keep up this vitally important work. Thank you.
Simone, would you now like to give us some of your thoughts?
Of course. Thank you very much for having me. And of course, I never expected I would be here today accepting this award. Whilst I do have a healthy dose of hubris, I was thinking maybe I'd get a nomination certificate in the post. So when I got an email from Sue announcing the decision, I was left quite speechless. But of course, not speechless enough not to be preparing something to say today. And as I was writing it, one thing that I kept thinking about was the suggestion that I should include a bit on how the prize money is going to be furthering my work for peace. I wasn't really sure what to say because nothing I have done so far has required me to part with any amount of money. This is when I realized that even though I didn't have to pay anything to do the majority of the things I did, those campaigns were in a way built on money nonetheless. It was because of money that I was allowed to stand in the middle of campus at university collecting signatures against tax dodging. It was because I didn't need to spend my free time working 3 jobs to cover my bills. Sure, I felt like my feet were freezing, but I knew that once I got home, I'd be able to warm them up because I knew my heating would be on. Money meant I could collect hundreds of hours with St. John Ambulance, enough to give weight to my request they allow white poppies on uniforms. And I could not have done that if I needed to work in a bar to pay for food. And sure, I had big bags under my eyes from working nights, but I knew that once I got home, I could sleep easily without having to be kept up by worry about where my next meal would be coming from. And indeed, there was no great personal risk involved with anything I've done. I didn't have to worry about being arrested or attacked and whether that would get me fired from my job. So if I am here accepting this award today, it is as much because I'm middle class as it is due to me doing my bit for peace. You might know a famous quote about standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, I think I'm here because I'm standing on the shoulders of privilege and wealth. Now, of course, peacemaking is not limited or should not be limited to privileged people. And I'm sure there's many peacemakers that go unnoticed even today because they don't have anyone with enough free time to write a nomination letter or put them in touch with a newspaper. And they deserve this award much more than I do. We are lucky that things are changing, and it's much easier to build up change thanks to new technologies. With a few keystrokes, we can get signatures from across the world on a petition. We can email a local bishop or MP and then brag about when they sign our petition in just a few hours. If we don't know someone who writes for a newspaper, we can put out a handful of tweets or a few posts on Facebook and gain traction that way. Of course, people will always be essential to peace work, and no matter whether it's the invention of the printing press or Instagram, technology will ever only be as useful as the people who know how to harness its power. Not everyone can afford to have enough free time for the kind of peace work we imagine is the gold standard. So our duty today is to discover the next generation of peacemakers, even if they don't look like us and don't sound like us and don't campaign like us, and empower them to find new and creative ways to amplify their voices and be heard. With the technology we have access to today, we have no excuses if we fail to look for them further than our universities or our young professionals. Peacemaking may start with a single person, but it would go nowhere without fellowship and networks of people working together. By nurturing an orchard of different people from different backgrounds, we can ensure peacemaking has the right rootstock to tap much deeper streams of creativity and commitment, and weather whatever these troubled times we live in might have in store for us. It is a privilege to be in front of you all today to talk about this, but it is a much greater privilege for me to be able to put some of my words into practice. I will be using the award money to empower peacemakers across the globe by donating to the International Peacemaker Fund by the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and also to help people in my local communities who are struggling with everyday costs of living. And of course, I would amiss if I didn't also take this opportunity to mention the Reset Debt campaign and invite you to take part if you are in the UK. And finally, I want to thank my partner, Fiona, and thank you all again for having me, and thank all the peacemakers out there, whether they will be getting a nomination certificate in the post sometime soon, or whether they are yet to be discovered by the rest of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simone. That was very powerful. Thank you very much. We're now nearing the end of the formal gathering, and we're going to conclude with the Universal Prayer of Peace, which is going to be read by Sister Elizabeth. I hope you're prepared for that. And then finally, there's going to be a song, The Road to Peace by Sue Gill-Murray of the Anglican Peace Fellowship. But just before then, we're going to put up the details of some events of this week for peace and how you can get a hard copy of the leaflet if you haven't got your own copy already. There is a copy available on the internet, but if you want your own hard copy, usually we'd be giving them out at the gathering, but obviously that's not possible today. But it is still possible for you to get your own copy.
Keith, if I may just add that through the sale of this leaflet, we are able to gather the money to award the Peace Prize every year. So particularly those who are aligned to organisations, obviously if we can provide these to you in bulk, that has a very big impact on the award that year. They're very, very beautiful, and every day has got a collection of prayers and meditations from faiths and no faiths. Thank you.
Thank you, Benafra. That's really important. And also, we should add that the Anglican Peace Fellowship and the Methodist Peace Fellowship have taken turns in putting money towards the award as well. So thank you for that. So, can we hand over to Sister Elizabeth?
Let us pray. O God, lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth. Lead us from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Peace to the nations, east and west. Peace to our neighbours of every race and creed. Peace to all women. Peace to all men. Peace to each child. The peace of Christ be above all peace. Amen.
Thank you. The song is The Road to Peace by Sue Gill-Murray of the Anglican Peace Fellowship. Thank you.
We
thank you. And that brings us to the end of this gathering. We hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for coming. It's great to see so many people here, and thank you especially for the people that have contributed here today. I've got a lot out of it, and I hope you have.
Yeah, thank you.
So Keith, I would just like to say something before we close that's so relevant to the song we just heard, is that on behalf of the World Peace Flame, we'd like to invite everybody to join our virtual walk around the world for peace. It's taking place at the moment and will be ongoing over the next week and the following weeks. And it's bringing in the Footprints project, which most of you know about as well.